Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, I believe, correct? All right, we'll go ahead and get started by calling the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. And we have no one else here, but thank you for being here, those who are attending. Any changes to the agenda, Dr. Finch?
No changes?
Okay, and that takes us to communications. Any?
No communications.
All right, then we'll go into discussion item, school board self-evaluation debrief. So we have someone from WVSD today, Cindy McMullen.
Yeah.
McMullen. Thank you, Cindy, for being here this evening, and we'll turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you gentlemen again. We're sort of doing stage two. Last time we talked about what our responsibilities are as a school board member and as a board in general. And then in the meantime, now you've taken the WVSD board self-assessment, and we have those results. You have three different documents that Dr. Finch has provided for you, so lots of paper. There is a short document. It only has 5 pages, and it says Board Self-Assessment Survey Scoring Ranking. We'll be using that mostly, but there is also this year's answer by answer report, and then the comparison report for the last couple of years that previous boards have also taken for a reference. I won't be using the ones that involve previous boards, really. You are a unique group of gentlemen, and what you're doing really doesn't matter as far as what somebody may have done before you. And then I handed out another packet, and it is actually this school board standards, except not in a booklet, because I didn't have enough for all of you. And my mother told me I was never supposed to go anywhere if I didn't have enough for everybody. So I made you photocopies instead. I brought this because that's what you took the test on. And very often when we do our board self-evaluations, we don't go back to what it was we were testing ourselves on. So we answer all those questions, and then it's like, well, what was I aiming for? What was it that we were talking about? So I thought we might start with just a very quick review of the various board standards and especially the benchmarks. Because this is what those questions are getting at. And then when we look at your answers to the questions, we'll see the ones that you feel strong in, the ones that you have a divergence of opinion on, and then the ones that you might want to look at for the future. And one of the things to remember is there is no way to do all of these in the 4 category every year. You're going to focus on one or more of them and do better in that particular category, hopefully carrying along the ones you've done well in the past. But so the fact that some of them you may think you're not as strong in, that's just because even collectively, you're all human. So the first standard that we have is providing responsible governance. And that includes things like your board meetings. Are they respectful and fair? Are you accountable and open to the public and seeking divergent perspectives as you're making your decisions? Are you respectful and advocate mutual understanding of board member and superintendent's roles? Do you have policies based on well-researched practices that emphasize the belief that every student can achieve at high levels, and that those policies also support continuous improvement for student achievement. Do you promote healthy relationships by communicating supportively, inspiringly, and motivating and empowering others, especially the community that supports your students as well as your students? And then, are you working as an effective and collaborative team? And we know that when you work as a collective, as an effective and collaborative team, it makes all the difference for your district. That is the rudder that guides you, that guides everything that's happening in the district. Under Standard 2, this is setting and communicating high expectations for student learning, having clear goals and plans to meet your high expectations. And of course, the first thing is that you articulate that all students can learn, and that you make it clear that you believe student learning can improve regardless of existing circumstances or resources. And that's a pretty big belief. Quite frankly, miracles can happen in your classrooms. That you are a leadership group and you lead in the development, articulation, and stewardship of the district's vision regarding learning. And that vision is shared in your schools and in your community. You have adopted collaboratively developed district plan. Your schools have their SIPs, their school improvement plans. You also have developed now a district plan that collates all of that and guides all of that. Focused on learning and achievement outcomes. So this is different than your capital projects plan or your maybe your levy campaign plan or any of those things. This is your student learning plan. I think one of the ones that sometimes becomes challenging for all of us is this idea of non-negotiable goals, especially in times where our resources become stretched. What are our non-negotiable goals for our student achievement? And then how do we align what we're doing and what the rest of the district is doing to make sure those goals are being followed? Number 3 is creating the conditions for district-wide student and staff success, because we know that the staff has to be successful to maximize what our students are learning. So we talk about safety and security, talk about employing and supporting all of our staff, the best quality that we can. And that includes professional development, because we know that all of us need to be lifelong learners. Also providing for learning essentials, whether it's the curriculum, technology, facilities, everything that's needed to support the work that your teachers and other staff are doing with your students. Then there's the management part. Operations, resources for things like making sure that lights go on in the classroom. It's much easier to learn, at least if you're asking kids to read. Then adopting and monitoring the budget. One of our major responsibilities, and the idea of allocating resources based on the district vision, goal, and priorities. And sometimes it's easier to say, well, we can pretty much do last year's budget again this year. We'll increase it for inflation and maybe some extra students, and we're done. That may be what we end up doing, but we need to take the view of what is this budget supporting? What are we accomplishing with the money as we're allocating it? Standard 4 is holding the school district accountable for meeting student learning objectives. So again, committing to continuous improvement in student achievement, evaluating the superintendent, who is the learning leader in your district, measuring student academic progress in all the various ways that you can do that, whether that's formative assessments, summative assessments, anecdotal information. I know that tonight you're going to be celebrating your boys' basketball team and also your drama program. And I thank Dr. Finch for sharing that ahead of time with me so that I could know about it too. But that's also important assessment information. What kind of opportunities do your kids have and how are they doing in those opportunities? Standard 5 is our communication with the community. And of course, we represent the community to the school district and make our decisions in respect to that. But we also represent the school district out to the community. And so collaborating with families and community members, responding to the diverse needs in the community, mobilizing community resources. We know that so many of our partnerships are so important to meet the gaps that we have, whether it's in funding or it's in expertise, or maybe it's just in personnel, to be able to provide programs to our students. Ensuring that everything we do is transparent. And that's more than a buzzword. It has been a word that I've heard now for the last couple of years as being like the thing. But it is important that we are as transparent as we can be because it builds the trust in the community. And it helps folks understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Working on getting district information and decision-making communicated out to the community. Not just what we did, but how we went about doing it and why we did it. And the days of just, if you want to know, come listen in on the meeting are gone. That's much more our responsibility now. And soliciting input from the staff and also the community on the diverse range of interests and perspectives. You all are 5 amazing gentlemen, but you don't have all the knowledge and all the skills and all the experiences that everyone in your community has. And so by being able to listen to them, understand all of that, and then leverage that to help you make the very best decisions you can, that will make it better for your kids, for your staff, and ultimately for your whole community. So that's what you were taking your test on. I don't know if you knew that, but that's, as you were answering those various questions, that's what you were evaluating. And you were evaluating the whole board as you see it. The 5 of you took the test. The superintendent generally does not take this test. This is to know what you as a board individually, and then when we discuss it collectively, feel how you're doing. I like to start with this scoring ranking because it collates quite a bit of information from the questions that you answered. In the very first column, it's the average of what your scores were. And you can see that on the first page, you have a significant number where you all agree that you are doing the best that can be done. And then an even more significant number where almost all of you feel that way. And those are the ones that carries into page 2. Those are the ones that are highlighted in green. Then there's a group that are kind of in the middle. And then at the end of the document, there's a group starting on page 4 that are highlighted in kind of a pink or a red color, starting with a ranking of 3. Now, I have to tell you that if getting a B on this test, that is a 3, is a low score for you, you're doing pretty well. You have a couple that are in the 2s, but most of them are even like 2.8. So we're not going to need to take you to the principal's office or to the hospital. So you're doing well. But they might be things that you want to look at and say, well, maybe we want to focus a little more on that in the future. What I'm going to ask you to do is, first of all, look at the ones that are in green. I'm sorry, I didn't go through all of the information. I got ahead of myself. So the second and third columns on there are the deviation. So the minimum number and the maximum number. And of course, in the 4s, everybody gives you a 4. You have some where somebody thinks it's a 1 and somebody thinks it's a 4, and everything in between. And so we'll talk about that difference of opinion a little bit later on. Gives the standard deviation. Then it gives the question number. So if you want to go back and read the exact question and also get the specific 5 answers, that will be in that packet for the 2025 answers. It'll also be in the other one, but it's probably a lot quicker and easier to find it. And Peter did a great job of asking for that as separate. The next column is in words to remind us pretty much what it was that the question was about. Then there's the standard, and then there's a statement of the standard. So what I'd like you to do is look at the ones that are in green individually first, and see what it is about those that's interesting to you. It can be in any or all of those different columns, but just with an open mind, look at what those are and kind of make some observations. I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. Okay. So you all have been very busy. You're very good students. Looked like there was a lot that caught your eye. I'm not going to call on people. This is the time for you to share with each other. What was it that caught your eye in this section where all of you have determined that you're doing pretty well?
I would say I picked out some key words, and I can explain what they go with, but I think you know because you just read it. Transparent, responsible, respect, honor, agree. In several of those, I picked out those key words.
Super.
Yeah, I picked out the same thing. I saw a theme there with respect, honor, success, understanding, trust, commitment, the same words I saw there. I also saw a common theme with the budget in there.
Mhm.
And that is,
I appreciated the uniformity of some of those things where we all value them equally and that we want respect for each other. We give respect to each other. We want accountability for each other. We give accountability to each other. We expect that all students can learn in excellence. It was good.
I thought it was interesting that of the ones where all 5 board members ranked it 4, there were almost all the standards were in those areas. So standards 1, 2, 3, and 5 were all part of those unanimous areas of agreement there moving forward with the district. The one that was the next down for number 4 that caught my eye was require the effective use of data throughout the system to monitor student achievement and district performance. So my perception, that's the strength of our district is the use of data. So, and that is standard 4, hold school district accountable for meeting student learning expectations. So of all the standards, 1, 2, 3, 5 were at the top, and then that number 4 there, use of data. So all the standards have some high rankings.
And that's not necessarily something that I see when I work with boards. Boards tend to focus on various things, and sometimes they have a board plan where they've looked at the standards and they say, you know, this year we'd like to focus on number 1 and number 4. And so that's where they put their energy. Not unlike sometimes you ask your superintendent to focus on not all 8 of the things that you can grade him on in his superintendent evaluation, but maybe 3. So you might see a higher number in one of them. The fact that you are strong across the board in the standards is excellent. It's one of the reasons I think that your district is as good as it is. Anything else, anybody? Anybody?
Well, just a couple of quick thoughts, very similar to what some of my colleagues on the board here just said, but just the things that I kind of tend to focus on is one of our primary responsibilities is to be fiscally sound, to manage the budget, make sure that the resources are there. And I was very pleased to see that, for example, question 50, question 40, question number 4 there, they all tend to interrelate with that accountability, that responsibility, that, you know, our budget is driven by what our goals are, basically, student achievement. And, you know, it says, for example, adopt a fiscally responsible annual budget that is aligned with the district's visions and plans. I mean, to me, that's a very key item for us to do. And I was glad to see that all 4 of us, you know, agreed in that. And even where we were close but didn't quite, still adopts an annual budget that supports quality staff development and resources for curriculum implementation. Again, the same theme of aligning our fiscal responsibility with what we're doing for the school district and students and learning. And then basis decisions, this question number 4, basis decision on what is best for the student success. Again, the budget plays a key part in doing that, allowing that to happen. So I was really glad to see, you know, the cohesiveness in those areas. as a board.
And especially in these last 5 years, I would say, it's always been important to be fiscally responsible and for us to know what's in the budget. Certainly since 2020, it's been even more important because of the challenges that our schools have had to face. And because we got a nice large infusion of funding to meet a crisis. And then the theory was that the crisis ended. And in my estimation, the crisis has not ended, but certainly the money to address the immediate crisis has now gone away. And we know that we have residual issues that we're dealing with, as well as every year, it seems, there's something new that we can focus on that can help our kids. That we understand our kids a little better and maybe we can help them a little better. And so with our limited resources, we have to be laser focused on where we put those dollars. And it's very clear that you all have been. And I applaud you in not having to go through some of the trials and tribulations that other school districts in our state are going through right now, and that my school district went through a couple of years ago. And that being steady, that's huge. The trust for your community to know that you are managing the money not just for this year or next year, but with the understanding of what is sustainable is critical, but it's also critical for your staff. And when you have a nice, calm school district where nobody's particularly worried about, oh, wait a minute, are they running out of money and am I or my program not going to be here next week? We kind of look at the federal government maybe right now. People are a little on edge. Because of your fiscal management and being steady and thinking to the future, those worries are not in your community. They are not in your schools. And that is huge. The one thing that I would say that you need to keep doing is to keep telling people that that's what you're doing. I've been a school board member for a long time, and I guess what I've thought was if I do my job well, people will figure out what I'm doing and I'm doing it well. Especially in today's era, whether it's social media or what, I've come to realize we need to be very specific, telling people what we're doing and why we're doing it. And not thinking that they'll understand when they see the answer. And I think that's something that has evolved especially in the last 5 years. So toot your horn a little bit. Tell folks how well you're doing, but that it is not luck. It is because of your strong commitment to your students, whether it's in the budget or curriculum or wherever. Anything else that you saw in these things that you're doing great? One of the things for me is that sometimes when I work with school districts, the greens go down to like 3.5. Only goes to 3.8 for you all. You are high achievers. Before we get into what looks like the middle ground for you all. And I would say that to have that many of your standards where you basically all agree or someone has maybe a question about them, but only one person, especially with a young board, as you all are, is commendable for sure. Are there any on these ones that are green that now that we've patted you on the back and cheered you on, that as you look at them, maybe you were the person who thought you were getting a B instead of an A, Or now that you look at it, you think, oh, well, maybe we're not A+ in that. And there's something that you think could even strengthen what you're doing in those areas?
I would have thought that, we would have had a little bit higher in the green on community engagement.
Which one's that one?
Standard 5.
Mhm.
I think I mean, obviously, we do show strengths in that. I would have thought that that would have been a little bit higher. I think that one of the things that, as I think about my time on the board, there are initiatives that the school board and the school district have taken to engage our community, and I think that this has been a topic at the forefront of many of our discussions. And I do think that we are being intentional in our efforts to engage the community, as far as, we have family engagement coordinator, and various things, rather than, but I think that sometimes it gets lost in the school boards. Oh, I mean, let's take out 2020 and 2021 from the sample set. Largely, school board meetings are not well attended, and for some board members, both current and past, that has caused a level of disconcertion with them because, well, if the community was really involved, why aren't they showing up to school board meetings? And I have a response for that, which are that school board meetings are generally pretty dry and very businesslike and very formal, and that's not what the school board meeting is about. In this, and boards, both current and past, longing for something more with the board personally being involved in the engagement process. And I've struggled with that concept personally because I'm a very formal person. This meeting has a certain decorum and formality to it that the law and our policies require. So I can see in here that we're longing for better engagement, but I don't necessarily have this great answer of how do we solve that problem. I can identify this issue, I think, but that's what I see here.
Okay, super.
And it bothers me that I don't have a better solution. Because if I can identify the issue, I'd like to help resolve that problem, but I don't have a great answer.
I will just tell you that if you develop the great answer, the most important thing is to patent it in the name of the school district. Because then you will never have to go out for a bond or a levy again.
Yeah.
All of us are searching
Yeah.
for this, and
Yeah.
part of it is that we are in a time of transition in society, moving from the way life was in the last century, where we did a lot of talking to each other directly, or we read newspapers, and maybe there was the radio, and now we have social media, and we have all kinds of news outlets that have different viewpoints, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And part of it, and we're not alone in not having completely figured it out, but we're all searching for how to do better
Sure.
in that. And so one of the things in the second half of this, after your regular board meeting, that we're going to talk about is what kinds of things do you want to think about as you're going forward into the next year that you might want to work on, like you're talking about communication. I think every board is looking at that. And the one thing that I would say is that the district communicates and usually does a great job, especially to its immediate patrons, its students, and its families. But that's usually about the day-to-day workings of the school, whatever the kids need to know, whatever the parents need to know, so that the kids know what they need to know. The broader community is where the communication issues usually come up. I don't have kids in school anymore. If I were not on the school board, it is unlikely that I would know a lot about what's going on in the district unless my neighbor told me or somebody got, as a friend of mine says, all fuzzed up about stuff. So looking at how we reach out to folks who don't have the natural connection to what we're doing is exceedingly challenging.
Combined with the fact that when we do reach out to those people, it always feels like it's because we're asking them for something, like their vote on a levy or a bond. And, and then Central Valley has a similar problem than West Valley does, in that, we're not like Sela, for example, that has a school district that is part of a town. Natchez School District that's like part of a school, it's a town that's part of the school district. We're just sort of this half incorporated, half unincorporated part of Yakima. And so, I mean, again, I'm not here to justify why we're deficient, and that's not probably the right way to say it. It's just, these are challenges, and for all of the other reasons that you talked about, it's challenging. That and it's different than when we all went to school, in that the demands on parent time, particularly in our district, where I would say many of our families are involved in extracurricular activities and evening commitments, and we're busier than we've ever been, I think also stretches our abilities to engage in a meaningful basis with our community. And I wish that I wish I also had the answer for how do we get that engagement when people aren't mad. We get a lot of engagement when people are mad about something that was in the yearbook or something that went awry at something that happened in the school. But when there isn't that crisis, whatever that crisis is, we have a hard time. We just have a hard time with engaging. And I again, it's an issue. I don't have a great answer.
Right. It is one of the most challenging issues. It's when you pull into the parking lot and it is not full before a board meeting and you go, oh, good, nothing controversial on the agenda. Or you pull into the parking lot and there are no parking spaces for you anymore. And you think, oh, wait a minute, are we talking about a coach? Are we talking about a sports program? It's those kinds of things, absolutely. And that's historically
Sure.
been there. But now there are societal things too that come to us and put more stress on that, and how we communicate with folks who don't agree with us. It's becoming more and more challenging. So I think the idea of looking into that may be something, that you want to do. Very quickly, I would like you to go to the end now, to pages 4 and 5. And again, remember that a 3 is a B. It's not like you're failing the course. It's just you think that you have room for improvement. So if you would look through the ones that are on pages 4 and 5, starting with the red or pink. And do the same thing that you did with the green ones. See what strikes you there. And in particular, think about why you may have said you didn't feel you were doing as well in this area as the ones that you marked as 4s in the green area. Okay, so What struck you in this part of the ranking?
Well, one, it goes right back to what Mr. Thorner just said, because there's four things that talk about communication. And out of those four, three are communication with the community. So without further discussion, it goes back to what he was
Okay.
just talking about. So I can see that can be problematic still, that we need to work on. There's 4 or 5 places where it talks about have policies. And to be straightforward, I don't remember how I answered some of these. It's been a while back, so I'm not remembering some of this. But some of it for me is when I was going through the survey, it's like, I'm not sure. I need more info, like on any survey. And so you sort of put the first thing you think of, and then you have to think it through some more. But if you put our policies on a stack here, they're like this high.
Oh,
And
you're
so-
very lucky. We used
Yeah.
to have, before they were online, we used to have 4 this size binders that held ours.
Yeah, so my point is some of this is just like, we probably do have those policies, but being a fairly new board member, I'm not familiar with all of them. So when
Right.
I look at some of these, I would go, well, we probably do, but I'm not sure. I probably need to look it up. So there's some things like that I'm sure I answered a little lower just because I'm not sure, not that we don't have them.
Okay.
Um,
And if you don't know, it's possible that the community doesn't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll finish reading all the policies before my 4-year term's up. But the crucial ones, of course, you
Right.
look at.
Right.
Cindy, just a note here, just to keep us on time
Mhm.
with track. So I'd like to give us like a 5-minute break before the regular
Absolutely.
board meeting. And then we talked about this earlier, we could resume somewhere in our regular meeting. So just for the rest of the board members' knowledge at 6:55, we'll go right up until that point and then take a 5-minute break and come back and resume the regular meeting. Okay, go ahead.
Sounds
Whoever's
good.
next.
So this is your part of the discussion. So what other things did you notice?
Well, I'll be brief instead of long run-on sentences like I did earlier. As Mr. Walcott said, and I think that as I look at the ones in red, some of the ones in red, and particularly the one that caught my attention was have policies for evaluating staff based upon student success. So are we going to have a board policy about evaluating staff? Answer, no.
Mhm.
Are there going to be internal policies that are there internal policies and standards by the superintendent and the team to evaluate teachers? Where I think of this, for example, is when we go through the data summit and you have the elementary teachers and how they're doing by classroom as a means for targeted professional development. Okay. I've been on the board for 12 years. That probably took me 6 years for the light bulb of that to come on. So I appreciate what Mr. Walcott just said, which is as I've said to the newer board members, this is like drinking out of a fire hose, and it's going to be for quite some time, and it still is for me in some respects. So I think that as I look at the areas in red, or some of the areas in red, I think this is just more of the continuation of what do we do in our school districts and why do we do these things? Because I think then we will find over time that yes, in fact, we are doing these things. It'll be illuminated more as we get into some of this. And I think that's where probably some of the differentiation is. The second thing is that caught my attention, and then I'm going to stop talking, is communicate performance expectations for the superintendent to our community. And I can understand why that one scored the way that it does. I don't think the board, has been as intentional about that. And that's interesting. That statement is interesting to me, not because we shouldn't be doing it. It's just that we haven't. And I think, anyway, that is an interesting, that question is interesting to me. And
Is
I
that
look at
something
that-
we communicate?
well, I think it is. I think it should be. And we should do a better job of that.
What'd you say, James?
I asked, is that something we should communicate?
Yeah,
Oh.
I think we need to be more proactive about that. Anyway, that was another thing that there's a question that
Yeah.
stood out as like, yeah, you know what? We probably need to do a better job of doing that. Obviously, we are conducting our evaluations. Those aren't, you know, those reports and so forth aren't necessarily in the public record, but certainly what we expect from Dr. Finch is not a secret or shouldn't be a secret. And I thought that was a very thought-provoking question to
One
me.
that also recalls, I thought our last meeting, we talked about maybe making some of those things more public too. And so I think we are looking at how to continually communicate what we know with the community and have a better engagement.
Mhm.
Similar to some of the comments that have been made, one little different, looking at some of the questions that struck me. And I'll read them off: 21, number 7, and number 61. And they strike me as, it appears like we don't have a process for things. And I'm a structured person. I like process for everything we do. There needs to either be a process or we come up with a new process. It's similar to a policy, but I don't see it exactly as a policy. It's if you're going to have an election on something, what is the process for that? Or if you're going to decide to have the superintendent take on X, Y, Z, what is the process to get us to that point where we're saying this to the superintendent? Those questions there, when I see them in the responses that we're so low, I always felt like we did have a lot of those things. And so it appears now that maybe it's because we have new members that they haven't seen it as much as we have.
Sure.
But, you know, I would like to make sure that somewhere as we progress and get further down the road, that the process is understood by everybody, not just former members or older members. And well, we want it as well as with the new members too. And I think that's a real important thing, because if we establish a way to develop processes for the things that we decide on, I think we can tackle anything as long as there is a quote unquote process in place that we can adopt and use. So anyway, that's what struck me the most.
All right.
I think one thing that stuck out in all of those, and I think Mr. Thorner really alluded to it really well, is that the regular evaluation is in a lot of those, you know, and I think a lot of it maybe has to do with, there are things that, you know, Mr. Finch is doing and our other superintendents are doing, our principals are doing. And so the policies are in place. We understand that they are, but they're not necessarily in our sphere and not necessarily in our responsibility either. So it's just more of, I think we're just not aware that they're happening, but I do believe that they are happening. So the regular evaluation was in there a lot, it seemed like. And
Yeah, that's actually my one comment was definitely related to that, where some of these are, I would say, areas that we could improve in, like the communication. Others are areas that we're currently doing, but we could improve the board understanding of what we're currently doing. And the one that jumped out at me was the safety and security, regular evaluation of that, because we do have every principal is doing a monthly evaluation of safety and security risk for each school. That's through the School Safety Operations and Coordinating Center, but we have not presented to the board regarding that. So the board really probably doesn't know the type of regular evaluation that's happening for safety and security. But I think that would be something good to bring to the board's attention and have a program that shares that information about safety and security. And then, of course, we'll have some time in the regular board meeting to talk about next steps, because many of these are areas that we could improve in and have next steps on.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful consideration of what's in your analysis. And we'll come back later and, like your superintendent said, there are two things that I'd like to do later. One is look at the ones where you have the greatest deviation in your views, and see if we can uncover why or what it was people were looking at. Pardon me, and then some ideas that you might have for what you want your next steps to be. Because it doesn't do any good to take a test
Right.
if you don't put it into action for moving forward. So thank you very much, and I'll be back after you're done with everything else.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. It is 6:57. Why don't we say, I'm going to give us time here, 7:02 to come back. That gives us a 5-minute break, and we'll resume with the regular board meeting. Right, thank you, everybody, for being a little patient with us here. We'll go ahead and get the meeting called to order at 7:02 PM. Again, Tuesday, February 25th. We'll go ahead and get started by calling the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and Dr. Finch, I believe there are some changes, some addition of travel requests.
Yes, we'll add 2 travel requests for boys basketball team going to state.
Yay.
So
I suppose we'll deal with
I don't-
I don't know what should we do.
So we currently have a number 1 for travel requests. So we'll add a number 2, which will be a trip to Mill Creek, February 27, 28. And then item number 3 will be a trip to Tacoma, March 4 through March 8.
Okay, and those will go into item 11 there. All right, thank you, Dr. Finch. Communications? Response to
Yes, we
public
have
comment?
response to public comment. At the school board meeting on February 11th, 2025, 7 community members provided comments regarding the project to remodel some of the secondary school restrooms to be single-use restrooms. Response is that 7 community members shared their thoughts regarding the restroom remodel project. 2 spoke in favor, 4 said that they saw the benefits but were concerned about the cost and the method for funding the use of the remaining bond funds. And 1 said that they were recently retired and they were concerned about costs. The restroom remodel project has been placed on hold indefinitely. The school board will have a discussion at future meetings regarding capital projects and defeasance of funds. So just to give an update, we're working to have a presentation on defeasance at the April, first meeting in April. And then there'll be time for discussion about next steps after we hear about the defeasance process. That concludes the response to public comment.
Okay, high school ASB, do we have anyone here?
All right, Representative Katie Chappie is here this evening and she'll provide the high school ASB report.
Okay, so recently teachers hosted a course promotion fair at the high school where our students got to learn about all of the classes the high school has to offer and consider what classes they would like to take next year. We begin registration soon, so this was really helpful. Girls and boys basketball finished up all their regular season games and have kicked off their respective rounds of district playoffs. Wrestling has 2 boys and 2 girls who have qualified for state. Our students in this year's musical have been hard at work all winter rehearsing for the show, and it opened this previous weekend. You still have 1 more week, so make sure to catch a show this weekend. Our Mr. West Valley fundraiser came to a conclusion last Wednesday night, and we are proud of all they earned and donated this year. On February 11th, our seniors participated in the reality fair and learned all about the financial fun of being an adult. Mrs. Zeller organizes all of this, and it is a great activity students in the community really appreciate. On February 21st, we held our own Grammy Awards, and in an assembly, we recognized many groups and individuals who are doing great things this year, not just sports, since they have the PEP assemblies. These performances included ROTC, choir, band, and arts. The participants in Rams on the Red Carpet were revealed. These girls fundraised for the Yakima YWCA, much like the guys fundraise for the Memorial Foundation. Be on the lookout for opportunities to support them and learn more about what they do. Leadership students attended a workshop at Prosser High School and had some inspiring speakers to help motivate us for the rest of the year. Our ASB president, Xavier Duran, won the Student Leadership Award. It's exciting. On Tuesday, February 25th, our National Honor Society hosted a spaghetti feed to raise money for the Invested, the fund that helps students in need with fees or costs that might limit their participation in school classes or activities. So that's what's going on downstairs right now. Yeah, ASB is currently taking signups to the audition for the high school talent show that is in late March. And upcoming, again, it's the last weekend to see Cinderella. And then DECA is hosting the Daughter Date Night and promoting it at the West Valley Elementary Schools. And this fundraiser helps pay the expenses of competing at state and nationals. Spring sports begin on March 3rd. All of the spring traditions are being planned, including Tolo, prom, and senior graduation delivery is April 18th. That's all I have. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. And next is item 6, program presentation, special education. Dr. Finch?
All right, well, we'll ask the school board to join the audience so we can see the PowerPoint. We'll have Susan Almason, our Director of Special Education, and Stephanie Melton, Assistant Director, will provide annual update about special education.
All right, thank you for having us tonight. So just a little bit of an update. We are at 827 students currently who qualify for special education services. We started out the school year with 793, so that's kind of a big jump. And then just the breakdown by the grade level. And we are at 122 staff members in our department. Peter emailed me a few months ago about the inclusion data. We still haven't gotten the data from the state. So Stephanie and I put our math skills to work and figured out what we're looking at for LRE 1. So we don't have the blue bar there for 2024 because the state hasn't released that data yet. But as you can see, we are likely still above the state average. We did have a little bit of a dip in that LRE 1. So those are students who spend 80 to 100% of their day within the general education setting. We had quite a few, I think it was around 11 students who are pretty impacted with their disabilities move into the district this year. So that affects that LRE number because they are spending more of their day in a special education setting. And then just responding to the data as we're looking at data and how students are doing in the gen ed setting when we're doing co-plan and co-teach and things like that. And we did notice, especially at the middle level campus, that we had some students that needed to be pulled back into a resource room classroom to make progress on their IEP goals. So again, we're still at a good percentage, but just a little bit of a dip from last year to this year. All right, and then really what we're going to focus on tonight is how special education is helping to support the strategic plan, and really focusing more on our more impacted students. So, the majority of our students are, resource room students or students who only are qualified for speech and language services. And it's pretty easy to kind of conceptualize how they're included in the strategic plan and the goal areas. Where it gets a little bit tricky is our more impacted students, and how, when we're looking at things about meeting grade level standards and graduation rates and things like that, how we're supporting those students to make sure that every student is included in our strategic plan. So just to review, I'm sure the board members are familiar with this, but for those of you watching from home, so our mission for the West Valley School District is that we are creating a space where every student is valued, safe, and empowered to achieve academic excellence in an innovative culture of learning. Our vision is that students feel like they belong, that they are supported, and that they are learners. And then our core values are setting those high expectations. And in special ed, we talk about having appropriately ambitious IEP goals so that we're setting high expectations for all of our students. Inclusivity and belonging, so that we're including our students who are qualified for special education services in the general education setting to the greatest extent possible. That goals are student-centered, that we're future-focused. So really looking at those IEP goals and how we're working to build skills to make sure that our students are going to be successful in the future. And then community. So what kind of skills and things are we giving to our students to make sure that they're going to be able to participate in the community? And then how are we using feedback from the community to make sure that we're meeting those needs for those students and those families? All right, so our first goal is a culture of safety and belonging. So just a few highlights about how special ed is supporting our first goal for culture of safety and belonging. All of our elementary special education students are assigned to a general education class roster. So this really helps when students are ready to do specialist time, do morning meeting, go and start spending more time in the gen ed class. We're not scrambling to figure out what class they should participate with. From the beginning of the year, they are put on a roster, and so we know who their teacher is and can plan for them to be included in those classrooms. And then we've also increased our district behavior support staff to help support MTSS, especially for behavior and SEL at the building and individual student level. So we saw quite an uptick in behavior, especially at the elementary level this year. And so we're trying to meet the needs of all those students by increasing our behavior support that's available across all the buildings. And then our second goal for our early learners is strong foundations. So especially district-wide and for this goal, we're focusing on increasing student talk, especially for our more impacted students this year. We've really been focusing on how we can get our non-vocal and limited language students to be able to participate and communicate. And I just happened, as I was creating this presentation, saw this cartoon on the internet. But the guy is clearing the steps, and the guy in the wheelchair says, if you cleared the ramp, like, we'd all still be able to get up. And so working on, picture communication systems, AAC devices, that's something that all students could utilize to be using more language, not just our students for with special education services. And so that's a way that, we could be incorporating those things to create a richer language environment for all students when it really is something that we use for special education students. So focusing on those things. At the elementary level, when we're writing IEP goals, we've been looking at individualizing badge books for our students who are in special ed, so that when they are participating with the gen ed class, even if they are functioning at a lower grade level, they still have their own badge book, and there's things that they can work on in the gen ed classroom and get those badges and feel successful and like they are belonging and doing the work in the gen ed classroom. And then making sure that our IEP goals are aligned with those badge books and those standards. And then just making data-driven decisions regarding the location and duration of their specially designed instruction. So again, including the kids in the gen ed setting to the greatest extent possible, while also making sure that they're making progress on their IEP goals. All right, and then Stephanie's gonna speak to the secondary level.
Okay, so my focus is more working with secondary students, work some at elementary, but I'm new to my current position, but was a school psychologist at the high school for 8 years. And so the middle level is doing standards-based grading, more mastery of standards. And so they've focused on priority standards for our students in the DLC classroom for comparing to their IEP goals instead of just like, where are they at? Where are we wanting them to get to? And so just working on still standards-based grading within the DLC classroom so that they're included with those priority standards. And that's put into Skyward at the beginning of the year, and they work toward those aligned with where their needs are. Of course, we're doing inclusive practices, as Susan shared, across the district, and that looks different in each building according to the needs of that building and the students in that building. But being able to expose them more to a more inclusive setting in the general education classroom where they're at hearing the general education curriculum and being able to reach toward those grade-based goals. And so, a lot of times we look at where the student is and we want to set a goal that is within reach and reasonable for them, but stepping back and looking at the big picture of what skills we need to build to get them as close to those grade level standards as possible, because that's our ultimate goal, is to help them catch up and grow their skills as much as possible. So that's done at all levels and just within their IEP goals, keeping that mind on the goal there. And then career pathways. So we're doing a lot of things across the board in like the resource setting, general education setting, but focusing tonight on our students in the DLC setting. So this is our graduation data for students with services who graduate within 4 years. Saw a little bit of a dip. I want us to also keep in mind that our COVID waivers have went away, so that's impacting some of that. But as you see, we're still hitting above where we started before the pandemic hit, and so still making growth there with the graduation numbers there. Keeping in mind, they also extended our age that students aged out of special education, so that moved to 22 this year, and it was 21 in the past. And so we did have 6 students who would have graduated, were set to go, and that change happened right at the end of
2 days before
yeah.
graduation.
So in June, the first week of June, we were holding a lot of IEP meetings determining where the students were as far as being ready for life after high school, if they had met their transition plan goals or not. And if not, they stayed with us this year and was able until they turned 22 to build up those skills a little more. And so we did have 6 students who did that. So might not get them, all through in 4 years, but we want them prepared and ready. And some students need a little extra time to do that. So that's what we're doing. And part of that, of them being with us a little longer after those 4 years, is to be able to participate in our transition program at the high school for ages 18 to 22. So once a student has completed their 12th grade year, the next year, if they're staying with us and need continued supports and to grow those skills, they go into the transition program. So 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, students are out working at Ray's Market, Ace Hardware, Summit View Thrift. And then this year they got a little experience with the Pegasus project and taking care of horses and learning about horses. And so we have, as you see, they do sorting and a lot of different things, building different things at Ace Hardware for display. And we have one student who has done really well working out in the community that recently graduated, who is in the process of being hired at Race Market. So seeing some good continued growth there, building their confidence, building their skills, their work skills. And so for our students who are in the DLC program, not yet in the transition program, that are in our other 2 classes, we're piloting with the ESD 105 to come in and do vocational training with our students that is directed at their skill level. And they come in with us 2 days a week and work directly with our students to kind of build up those skills. So that's it. So that's what's going on.
So we'll have the board come back up here and we can have a little question.
Well, thank you, Susan and Stephanie, and also really appreciate the presentation and showing the alignment with the strategic plan. It's really great to see that alignment from our boardroom to the classroom. So that's great. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick 2-part question. You said that there was 793 students at the beginning, 827 students after we started. Is that typical to have that big of a switch, and where does it come from?
We've been adding students pretty consistently over the last many years. Not quite that big of a jump. We did have quite a few kids that transferred into the district.
Okay.
A lot more than normal. I think at the beginning of the year, our secretaries were working at getting almost 40 students enrolled and into services at the beginning of the year. So yeah, we had a big group of transfers this year.
You ladies are doing an amazing job. Thank you.
I appreciate it was neat to see the transition program, and my question was going to be, what do they do in that transition program? But you answered it, and just to see, I love to see Rays to be able to jump in and support the kids and the school and stuff. You talked about the more impacted students, and I'm just curious, but what does a day look like for one of the more impacted students that doesn't get to spend as much time in the classroom?
That's really more variable than probably any of our other students who are in special education, just depending on their needs and how much support they need. So we have some students who spend all day in the special education classroom because that's the level of support and the intensity of instruction that they need to make progress on their IEP goals. And we have other students who are, they come and check in with the self-contained teacher, the DLC teacher in the morning, and they're spending most of their day in gen ed or resource room. And so it's really just a wide range. We work really hard to make sure that we are looking at data and that we are sending kids out to participate in whatever, and not just like be physically in the classroom, but participate meaningfully with their peers in the gen ed classroom. So whether that's going to recess, going to lunch, going to specialists, places where they can be successful, and then also get that meaningful participation and social interaction with their peers. Yep.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoyed your presentation,
Thank you.
and congratulations on doing such a great job. Okay, next we come to public comment on non-discussion agenda items. Again, those of you, do we have anybody?
Yeah, there's one.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm reminded to read this statement here. So members of the public who would like to provide public comment will sign in. Speakers will be called in the order that they signed in to speak. Speakers will be given 3 minutes for their comments. Public comment is not the proper forum to address concerns about a specific staff member. If a person has concerns about a specific staff member, they should make an appointment with the superintendent to address their concerns. All right, thank you. So with that, we have the first person, Carol Blevins.
Hello.
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 I wanted to speak tonight. I'm sure that we've kind of all heard about this, but President Trump on February 5th, he signed a executive order that to keep men out of women's sports, and that the schools that would lose federal funding who did not comply with that. And then on February 6th, I saw that Chris Radell, the superintendent of Washington State Public Instruction, issued a statement that he was working closely with the Attorney General to see what the next step for our school districts would be, because he stated that this was an unlawful order. So I wanted to ask tonight what West Valley, how West Valley District is planning to respond to this. My opinion is that this executive order is a good thing for our girls. The girls need to be protected physically and emotionally in sports activities and their private spaces, like restrooms and locker rooms. And I would say for the boys too. I raise boys. They don't want girls in their room, their bathroom, or in their locker room either. So, and then something that, while I was doing this, was something that came up that's interesting, I think, is since November 2024, the policy of the United States Capitol is all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings, such as restrooms and locker rooms, are reserved for individuals of the biological sex. And then they said it's important to note that each member of Congress has its own private restroom, and unisex restrooms are available throughout the Capitol. Now that really sounds like what we already have at school here. And I think it'd be, we already have it, and maybe that's going to save us thousands of dollars of remodeling our bathrooms. Yeah. And just one more example that kind of helped bring this home for me was when I watched a video of a man at a school board meeting, and he was expressing his outrage that his 10-year-old daughter was forced to share a restroom with the boys. And then he asked the school board members a question, how they would feel if their wives were forced to undress and use the toilet in front of a man. So that kind of, makes you kind of think about it a little bit. So that's just my comments for tonight. Comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for your comment. All right, do we have anyone else? If there's no one else on the list, but if anyone would like to speak that's in attendance in the public, this is now your opportunity. Okay, hearing none, seeing no one that would like to speak. Again, I want to thank you for your comment. We value every input, so keep providing those inputs and thoughts. All right, so moving on, item number 8 on the agenda, approval of the consent agenda. There are a number of items there. Again, we can take these all as one item as a consent agenda, or if somebody has a particular issue that they would like to discuss further, this would be the time that we could pull something out and talk about it if you so please.
I'll make a
Otherwise-
motion that we approve the consent agenda in full.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. With that, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Approval consent agenda is passed. That takes us to number 9, discussion items. So again, school board self-evaluation, next steps. And so are we continuing here with Cindy?
Yes, so we have Cindy McMullen. She's a representative of the Washington State School Directors Association, also a longtime board member from Central Valley of Spokane area. And so at our study session, we were able to review the board self-assessment, and then we also wanted some time during the regular meeting to talk about next steps. So Cindy, take it away.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. And I'm going to rely on your wonderful technology folks to get us back to the board self-evaluation. If you could pull up, yeah. How do I get back to the very beginning? Just go there.
Left and right.
Just hit, okay. Yeah, wonderful. That's what I need. All right, thank you. Thank you so much for your help. First and foremost, I just want to commend your special education folks and the presentation that they gave to you. The information was so amazing. The fact that it was tied to your strategic plan, that it talked about inclusion and all the other wonderful things they're doing, and that it was so succinct. One of the things that you talked about before was communication and with your community. And I'm wondering, what happens to that presentation now that it's been given to you? Does it go anywhere else? Is it perhaps something that a service club might be interested in knowing about? And you as a board member together with a staff member might be a possibility of sharing those things. I guess what I'm thinking of is you already have some wonderful information and communication products, like what your special education folks gave you. You don't have to invent anything new. And right now, I'm sure I can see your superintendent nodding. Please don't ask my staff to invent anything more new. But those are tools that you might be able to use for your communication of the work that you have directed through the strategic plan, that you have supported through the budget and through the folks who are being hired, and that you are holding the district accountable for providing education to all your students at the highest level. Just a thought. We talked about the things that you pretty much agreed on, that you were doing well, and then the things that you gave yourself a B or a C plus in. What we didn't talk about yet are the ones where you have differing opinions. And so there are about 6 of them that I'd like to review with you. And the first one is on page 4, not of this document, but the document that we were using before. It's question 6. Okay. And this is provide information to the public that supports the board's discussions and decisions. And you can see that 3 of you think you do that pretty often. And one of you thinks most of the time, and one of you doesn't seem to think that you're doing that very well. And I'm wondering what it is for the folks who said, we're doing that pretty well. What did you base your answer on? Where are you communicating? How are you communicating?
I'm trying to remember what I answered, but I think that I answered that we do that pretty well. And I think one of the things that Peter has done well is putting the information out there. So you can go to our website and there's always, the more information you put on a website, the harder it is to find any information, right? So there is a lot of information on there, but you can find those things on the website, and I think usually information is put out in public ahead of time if it's going to be on our agenda or something, So I do think that is one thing that, I don't know, in my opinion, I think that's what I answered.
Yeah, I remember answering the same. That was actually a perception from the WVSD conference that we went to. I'd heard time and time again about how many different districts it's very difficult to get any information. And they were telling stories about how sometimes they would have to go to the office to hear a transcript just to get the information. And then I began to think about how Dr. Finch has just consistently posted everything everywhere. There's always information. There's always routes to talk. There's always ways to get community. And so it's one of those ones where I think that if we were to compare our district to other districts, I think there is a lot of transparency and there's a lot of ability to get information out.
So do you have specific information that is tied to your agenda that's published to the public?
Yeah, well, one thing that I think we do is, don't we make a public copy of the agenda and the package that goes out before the board meetings?
It's on
That's
the
a
website.
valuable source of information for the public to use. I don't know how often it's used, but I think it's a good tool that's out there. And we do get some regulars that show up to some of our meetings, and I really appreciate that. I just wish we had more of them, but it's good to see that, there are people that are genuinely interested. And I don't want to take anything away from the people that I have talked to that say, I do attend, but I'm online, or I go and look at our stuff. That's another vehicle that, gets information out there. I think that one of the most important aspects of all of this is that even for those who don't come, when they become aware of an issue, they tend to get involved. I mean, I'd rather have something than nothing, if you know what I mean there, in terms of involvement. So there's something to be said both ways about that, but still involvement's involvement, and we need more of it. The hope there is that it becomes contagious. But the information, the key that I was really going with, where I'm going with all of this, is that the information that's in that package is really quite good. If you read through it, I know I go through it, and I know that my colleagues here on the board, I could tell they go through that information. It really has a lot of punch in it. And if we get our community to start looking more and more into those things, that's going to just help facilitate all the discussions we have.
Well, plus the public has the minutes of every meeting, and the videotape of every meeting. So, it's all there to be had if they want to.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe it's just thinking about all of those things. And then when the public said, well, why did you do that? Being able to explain it then, but say, and I would encourage you to go and look at the recording and hear what we talked about. Or we had a number of documents or information, and that would be in the February 25th board meeting. And you can go and you can see exactly what it was we looked at when we made our decision. Most of the time, I think it's just a matter of reminding people that you have it, first of all, that you're not, the five of you are not rolling dice and coming up with an answer. But that you have really good information and then helping them find it so that it can be shared.
And as you point out, I just want to add one last thing, is that we have used that exact approach in the past. I know that a number of board members and some that are no longer here, but have referred to when a member of the community comes to us and said, well, how did you get to this point? And the discussion is there, and we would point back to the fact it's available online. You can go look at it and you can hear the entire discussion rather than us trying to recall little pieces of it. So it is a very valuable tool, and it is used, is the point I'm trying to make.
I think that's wonderful. There are times when you have a major issue. It's not the normal business that you do. Do you have processes that you use to communicate with the public on something?
Yes, we have
You know.
used community forums pretty well in the past, and it's always a tool that's available to us as a board. And if something has high interest and expectations from the community, we want to do those things, and I think we do, and it's really great. Information is disseminated early to those individuals, and usually when we have those, there's handouts there at the forums that people can pick up as they come into the meeting. So those have worked well for us in the past.
And those have been hosted like at the Harmon Community Center. So not necessarily having people have to come to the board meeting here, but taking the board meeting to the people.
So it's a unique event.
Right.
Yes.
Around that. Excellent. So I don't want to call anyone out, but I'm wondering if the person who didn't feel that this was going very well feels more assured as the discussion is going along, or if there are some specific ideas to make this better that any of you might have that you want to talk about.
And again, the question was provide information to the public that supports board discussions and decisions.
Cindy, I will say it's very possible. I know I voted with the 4, but it's very possible that whoever put that may not remember what they put down
Oh,
because there were so many
absolutely.
questions. So
I understand that, and it also may be that, and again, you're a new board, and so not necessarily knowing all of the ways that gets communicated out. One thing that you might consider, some boards have been doing this in the last several years, is having a common set of questions that your staff answers when they do reports to you. We saw at our board meeting that we were asking the same questions like over and over again. And we thought, you know what, if we warned the staff ahead of time that we were going to ask those questions, well, then we got to the point where we said to the staff, your time is valuable. We're not going to ask you those questions. Please answer those questions for us in the cover sheet for the agenda item. And so what we have is, what's the budget impact? How has the community been involved in this? What's the history of this? The first question we ask is, why are we even talking about this? And then who does this impact? Where does it impact the staff? Where does it impact the students? And we post that so that the community has those answers like going into the topic. And we have found that that general background information has been really helpful to our public, and that they feel that they understand, they have more background information as we start discussing it. So it's an idea that you might want to think about. And
Cindy?
everybody's questions are always different.
Just-
Usually the budget issue is, everybody comes up with that one. But it's your strategic plan, it's your community, so the questions you might have that are standard questions would be unique to your district.
Just for clarification, so are you, those common set of questions, would that be, so like, we had special education come and present tonight, so those would be questions that you give to the one presenting at the school board in that evening ahead of time? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we use a platform called Board Docs.
Mhm.
And so we have, our agendas are posted online, and they have an electronic cover sheet. Pardon me. So when you click on that particular agenda item, what you get is the title, what the board is being asked to do, approve a policy or whatever. And then below it are the questions and then the answers that are the staff members provided. So it's a common expectation. And so we don't have to do it with each individual person. Everybody knows if you're going to make a presentation, part of the presentation is that first sheet. So, how about if we look at on page 4, question number 45. Let me get to that here. Don't anybody look at the screen. I don't want you to. Okay. So this is communicate an expectation that all classrooms will implement effective instructional practices. And again, most of you feel that you do this, but one of you doesn't seem to feel, maybe didn't know so much about what that is. Maybe if I could ask a couple questions of your superintendent. Do you have a guaranteed viable curriculum?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And you have training then for your staff on how to present that, not the finesse that teachers have and the way they bring joy to things, but what it is that this lesson is aimed at and what we want the kids to learn.
Right. We have a periodic curriculum adoption. And so when we adopt a new instructional materials for the curriculum, then we have training for the staff that are going to implement that curriculum.
And then I would presume in your staff meetings that sometimes there's like a little refresher course, or we're putting a new twist on this, so we're going to remember or whatever.
Right. In addition to the training that's tied to the curriculum, we also have effective instructional practices, especially when we look at language acquisition. So the project guided language design, the project GLAD, and then at the secondary level, the SIOP, the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. We actually had a presentation to the board last month about those type of effective strategies. And I kept hearing over and over, these are great strategies for English language learners, and they're great strategies for all learners. So when you're incorporating these strategies, it's really helping all kids in the classroom.
Okay. After that presentation, did the board feel like you were reassured that there's a common approach, there's a common emphasis, actually holding our teachers accountable to a common standard?
Mhm.
Is there still any concern in that regard? And if so, I'm not going to ask you to talk about it now, but share it with your superintendent. It may be that you saw something that others haven't seen that will be an improvement to that process. It may be that in all the things they shared with you, that wasn't one of the things they shared with you that they're doing. And then that would reassure you as well.
Yeah, Cindy, I think that's a good point that you make, that if you feel like on some of these where maybe majority of the board was one area, but maybe you were thinking something different, it'd be great conversation starter with myself to get more information And maybe again, because we have some newer board members, maybe there's things that are happening that they're not aware of. And so it's just a chance for me to help educate again, like where we're at. I also think about what Mr. Thorner says about joining the board, is that it's like you're joining a conversation that's been going on a long time ahead before you, and you're kind of jumping in the middle of the conversation and trying to get up to speed. And so just the more, this might be an indicator, different questions where maybe you just like to have more information as a board member. So certainly give me a call. We can, and just come into my office and sit down and talk and get more information.
So is there a way we can get a hold of what our answers were?
I do not
Because
know, but that's a
lot
really
of
good
us have
point.
said this, a few of us have said this already, like, I don't remember what I put on a particular question. And I know for a fact on a couple of them, I don't even remember some of them, on a couple of them, I know I'm going, where's the I don't know box?
Right,
You know?
right,
And
right.
you know,
And
from my perspective, there was nothing here that I said, I don't think we're doing that.
Okay.
For me, it was more,
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
don't know, I need to go ask, but I don't have a copy
Sure.
of the survey because I had to hit enter and it was gone. So, so it would be very helpful in processing this if you could have a copy and then sort of look through it and just lifelong learner type stuff, right?
I will take that back to WASDA.
Okay.
You fill this all out and WASDA does its magic with it. And then your superintendent and I at the same time get an email with the results.
And if nothing else,
So-
I can certainly look at these questions and what you just
Mhm.
suggested, go back over them and say, I don't know this, I better come and ask you. So in absence of that, yeah.
One of the reasons that I like to go over the ones where there is this great diversion in how you're thinking about it is sometimes it's exactly the discussion we're having here. Sometimes, though, it is a real difference of opinion. And it's important for all of us to know what our other board members are thinking or how they're viewing a particular topic. And more than once, I have thought when we've done our evaluation, I think we're doing pretty well on this. And then a board member, and I will say it is usually a new board member who has a different perspective, an outside view of what we've been doing, will say, well, I don't think, I thought that meant we did this and this and this, and we've never done any of that. It's like, oh, hadn't thought about it that way. Hadn't seen that perception. And particularly with a new board member, they often bring the community's perception of what we're doing. And that's a tremendous thing to be able to learn as I guess a polite term is a veteran member of the board. To see it in a little different light so that we do better when we can. The other policies we've talked about a little bit that you had a divergence on had to do with communicating regarding issues and the performance expectation of the superintendent. And you've really kind of already talked about those before. I think it's just a matter of focus. And I think you talked about that yourselves. And I would also say, we have a tendency to, let's say it's the superintendent expectations. We talk about those right around either hiring a new superintendent, go out to the community, what do we want, all of that, or when we evaluate the superintendent. But we don't do it on sort of an ongoing basis. And yet we are doing that. We have our expectations of the superintendent. We're thinking about how well he's doing and how proud we are to have this superintendent. And maybe it's something that could be commented on every so often, rather than just leaving it for once a year. And there might be, for example, I would think the inclusion model would be something that not only to congratulate your special education department on, but that takes leadership from your superintendent. That's a new, not new, but it's a cutting edge process. And not every district is doing it. And it takes the superintendent saying, this is what we're going to be doing. Whether special ed came to him and said, this is what we want to do, or whether he helped get that at the formation stage. I think you can take that good news and you can communicate it to your public that you had a high expectation of your superintendent that every student, regardless of their ability, would have a maximum opportunity to learn. And this is one of the things that we're doing in our district because of that. As opposed to, okay, we have 10 things that we want the superintendent to check off during the coming year. Yes, those are your expectations, but that's not necessarily meaningful to your community. So looking at what you agree with your superintendent are his goals for the coming year and how you're going to evaluate that, and then look for opportunities to share those goals, because they're the expectations, and the things that the superintendent is doing to meet those goals as you're presented information, as you're out in the community. Maybe you have a newsletter, maybe you get a grant as a result of that. Those can be ways that you communicate to your community what your expectations for your superintendent are. We talked a little bit about the policies to evaluate staff based on student success. And I think you were spot on. That is something that that the superintendent and the leadership folks, that's their responsibility. One of the things that you do have, I'm sure, is that, because it's required by state law, is that your staff will be evaluated with the teacher and principal evaluation process, TPEP. I know you have a busy schedule, but maybe a presentation on how that goes, just in general, especially since you have new board members, that might be something that could also be helpful to the public. I do think there are times when the public thinks that if a teacher is not bringing every student to an A+ level in the classroom, or the highest level on the SBAC, that maybe they're not a good teacher. We know that kids come in all shapes and sizes with all kinds of challenges, but also all kinds of talents, and that they learn at different rates, and that they learn different things at different rates. So for me, the most important thing that I ask for is, what's the growth in that classroom? How are we meeting the needs of the kids in that classroom? And I have found that, with very few exceptions over the 30+ years I've been doing this, every teacher in their own way is an excellent teacher. There are some that blow you out of the water, but most of our teachers are tremendously talented and gifted and dedicated. And we just have to see the work they're doing. That doesn't mean that they don't need professional development or coaching or any of the other things, because every day, every one of us can get better at the job we do. Are there any other ones on the list that you want to talk about? I guess the one I wanted to ask you about is, do you set goals as a board or as a board superintendent team for yourselves for each year? We do that. The law requires that the schools have a plan. The district has a plan. Do you do that collaboratively, maybe at a retreat or something, that this is what you're going to focus on and these are the goals that you all have?
Can you do that without it being a public meeting?
You can do it in public.
Okay, yeah, but it'd be a public meeting if you did that.
Usually we do it at a retreat. We don't go anywhere. We hold it in the same place. But it's a workshop kind of a thing, and it's, much more informal. Your president would not need to come in a full suit and tie. He could come.
He'd still do it.
He does it
He still
every-
will, okay. And what we do is we start with a strategic plan and we say, where does the board fit in the strategic plan? Yeah, we approved it, but there are other things we could do to support the strategic plan. And then we look at those and then we say, all right, so what do we want to accomplish over the next year? And for us, it's communication. And some specific initiatives, cell phones in school, a change to our calendar, and a couple of other things like that oh, good, that wasn't me, I hope. It might have been. But what are the initiatives we're going to focus on, and what is our role in that, and how are we going to go forward?
Ms. McMullen, can I ask, what's the format of that look like?
We have a one-pager that I will send to your superintendent, and it has columns. What is the strategic plan item? And then what is it that the board is going to do? What is it that the superintendent is going to do? And what we're trying to do is make sure that what we're focused on is aligned with what everybody else is doing. I mean, we're supposed to be leading, but sometimes you sort of lead by encouragement rather than by being the band leader. But making sure that the things we're looking at and we're considering are the things that the district is focused on.
And also, Cindy, when you also bring it back to the standards for the school board,
Yes.
and then you could pick out, just like we take the standards for the superintendent's evaluation, and then we've identified, all right, here's a strand that we want to have the superintendent focus on, here's a strand. And you could do the same thing with the school board, especially, I mean, I've heard quite a few of these were about communication, which is, and engagement of the community. The standard 5, engage local community and represent the values and expectations they hold in all the different parts of collaboration. I mean, that could be an area we could dive into.
Absolutely. And some of it, one of the things that we considered was what kind of professional development should we be getting? Is it general? And that's very important, like the conferences that WVSD has or the National School Boards Association has. But some of it also might be something specific, a specific initiative that your district is undertaking. It might be around, one of the things that we're getting professional development in is professional learning communities, and how those really work and what it is, how does the board support those? What should be our expectations, and what's going on in our district and what are we trying to accomplish? And sometimes that professional development is provided by your superintendent. That's what, we just had that in our last meeting. Sometimes it is sort of a new initiative that's coming, and there are experts in the field who are going to give a 1-day or a 2-day conference, and you might decide that all or some of you will go to that as a learning tool then to bring back and build on. But those are things that you put in your goals, and it's a way of planning your year then. What do you want to accomplish, and what things do you need to support your ability to accomplish those things? What reports will the superintendent need to make sure you get to do what are your goals? Those kinds of things. And I think around, as you said, your what you're looking at is your communication and your sharing. I agree with you that you're doing all of these things. I'm just not sure you're crowing about it as well as maybe you should. And telling people that this is what we did in this board meeting. We did, and why we did it. We talked about special education so that we were assured that we were meeting our strategic goal and that we were supporting all of our students. And here are some of the ways we're doing it. And just to be able now for you, when you go to Rotary or Kiwanis or Lions, I don't want to leave anybody out. I don't want to get into trouble. I don't want any club coming back and saying, but she didn't say me. But when you go and you're eating breakfast or lunch and you're just sitting there, then you can say, you know, we had this amazing presentation from our special ed folks. And this, it just warms my heart that we're able to do this or this or this for our students. Just that little bit of communication is huge. And it will go out across the community so fast. And it's your way of getting the good news out. You already know that the fires get set and they go through the community quickly. But if the community knows the good things that you're doing, then when there's a glitch, usually they give you some grace. And then the next thing is they say, I wonder why that happened. And they'll come back and give you the opportunity to work with them, to explain it. And if it's a glitch, you know, I think we say, yeah, we weren't perfect on that one. Something happened there and we're learning from it and we're fixing it and we're moving forward. I hope I've given you some ideas for going forward. I am happy to continue to talk with you about any ideas you have, but you have given me extra time tonight, I know, and I thank you for that. If you're comfortable with what we've done so far and you're ready to call it a night, that's great for me.
Can I don't really have a question for you. It's more for Dr. Finch. And I guess my question is, what direction does this give you in terms of you know, as you read maybe where we're divergent and, you know, I like the fact that we're not calling out board members and probably can't remember all of the answers, but does this provide you with some good feedback of some areas that you know you can help lead and us in a two-way street? I think, like I said, I think there's some things here that are illuminating that you know, as I've said, you know, you come into the middle of a conversation and yeah, we're doing, but maybe we need to be a little bit more intentional. Do you have some feedback, some sufficient feedback? What direction do you need from us, or would you like to see from us relative to this exercise?
Well, I think we had intentionally waited to do the self-assessment while the new board members were getting up to speed and getting onboarded. And I remember their first board meeting, we had Scott Dahlquist came and presented about the standards. It was like, welcome to the board, and here's all these standards. I was like, oh my goodness. So it's nice to circle back around and then do the assessment, take a look at the standards again. And so I do think that we will continue this discussion in the future. The setting goals for improvement is, I think we're at the point where the board has come together as a team and is able to take a look at the standards and set some goals for the future on that. Whereas before, I think you're still getting their bearings. So I think that'll be really good. And also the communication, I think there's some opportunities we have to increase communication and take just basically some of the things that we're doing already and make sure that we're communicating about that. So we can do that. But I would see us continuing the discussion in the future and especially looking at setting goals for the board.
Well, well, yes, agreed. We over the last 2 years, 2 school years, last school year, we had this goal of coming up and engaging the community and our staff in a strategic plan.
Right.
And that was a goal of last school year. This school year, the overarching goal is okay, now we have this strategic plan. You know, how are we going to go about implementing it? So, I mean, maybe that's more clear to me than it might be the other school board members. But that's I would say that's a huge undertaking. And then from there, we can have more specific goals after that. But that's just my 2 cents.
Right. I see the goal, the strategic plan is the goals for the entire district. And,
Right.
and we have been seeing some really nice alignment when
Sure.
we hear the buildings have been presenting and even this evening with special education. So that's, to me, the overarching goals for the district. But I think for the board itself, we could also have the board set some goals on areas that the board wanted to see some improvement. And I think that would be a good process to do.
I agree. I think it'd be a good process. I think I would say, yes, that's a goal of ours, implementing the strategic plan. But at the same time, I don't think we've actually had the opportunity to have the discussion and say, what are our goals? Our goals are this. You know, I think it's just kind of naturally come through conversation. So if we had I do think, you know, I was trying to wrestle through this idea of the retreat, you know, and, you know, maybe it's just an off night board meeting or whatever, where it is just more informal, but just for
Historically-
ourselves.
Yeah, historically, we actually have had retreats. I think we've done it. Well, we've done it here. We've done it at Apple Tree. We've done it in the summertime. Usually, at least historically, again, we don't have to do it that way, but historically, we've done it in the summertime prior to so around the time that we're passing the budget. And when that gets done and that part is almost done, then that's when, like late July, early August is when we've done that as Dr. Finch is welcoming back the administrators and setting the table. That's what we've at least done in some prior years.
Summer seems like the right time.
Or the goals can be developed out of the year-end superintendent evaluation.
Great.
As a springboard off of that.
Okay, great. All right.
And then again, thank you to Cindy McMullen for making the trip from Spokane. So really appreciate
Thank you, Cindy.
assisting.
Any more discussion on any of that? So if not, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 10 on the agenda, public comments of discussion items. So again, this is a place where we can talk about, or the public can comment on any of our discussion items if there are any comments out there. Anyone? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 11 on the agenda, approval of travel requests. A reminder that there's one listed, but 3 more items that, Dr. Finch, do you want to delineate those real quick for us?
Sure. So we have on the agenda 11A1 is a trip for the state tennis tournament, which would be in May. And then we're adding item 2, the boys basketball trip to Mill Creek on February 27, 28 for the first round of the state tournament. And then item number 3 is the boys basketball trip to Tacoma for the state tournament at the Tacoma Dome. And it's March 4 to March 8. And you could take those all as one item approval.
So there's 4 or 3?
There's 3.
3.
Yes, I had the same question. Thank you for the clarification. So 3
I'll-
total.
I'll move to approve the travel requests 1 through 3 as presented.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the 3 travel requests. So we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion for travel request carries 5-0. Next, we have approval of policy addition revision second readings. Again, there's the infectious disease, anaphylaxis prevention and response, opioid-related overdose reversal, employment of volunteer disclosures, certification requests, assurances, and approval. And 6600, the last one, transportation. I should say, I think that's the last one on there. So again, any more questions or any more information you care to share, Dr. Finch, on any of those?
No, this will be second reading.
Okay. Can we take these all together, or do we need to break these apart?
You can take them together.
All right, we'll take them together. If somebody, again, would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to take them together,
Or
approve them together.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries for the approval of policy additions and revisions, second reading, 5-0. Last on there is the approval of the 25-26 instructional calendar. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to see that already. If there are no questions on that, then we'll go ahead and I'll entertain a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the 25-26 instructional calendar. We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Approval of 25-26 instructional calendar. Item 12 on the agenda, items arising. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, I do. I'll just share. So since I became the WIAA representative for the board, been trying to pay attention and learn some more the last couple months with that, but do want to make everyone aware. I think we are aware. The WIAA is going to be voting on 21 amendments, which is a normal thing that they do every year, but that's going to be April 9th through the 18th. And two of those amendments, number 7 and number 8, will designate girls' sport. Number 7 would designate girls' sports for biological females and then leave an open division for boys. And then number 8 is another option, which would designate girls' sports for biological females, boys' sports for biological males, and then an open division. And so essentially what's going to happen is when this, if they were to vote and approve this, and it's done by the athletic directors that represent the 6 districts. It is the 6 districts in our state. So they'll vote for this, and those do go against our state law. But what will happen is they'll go up on a shelf because there is anticipation that law will change in our state. And so when that law changes, the WIAA will be able to implement it, and they'll be ready for it. And so there's a resolution that I put forward, and I would like us to consider the resolution March 25th, but it is to make a statement that we are in support of amendment number 7 and amendment number 8. So that's all I'll say about it tonight, but that's, I would like to have that added to the agenda for then.
Okay. Did everybody get a copy of that resolution? See it? Okay. All right. I guess we'll put it on the calendar for the 25th, what was it, the next meeting in April, right? The second meeting in April?
March
In
25th.
March, I'm sorry.
March 25th.
Okay. And I guess at some point we should have a discussion about even the resolution itself. So I guess that's what we'll do at that point. All right. Any other items arising? Okay. We'll go on to reports. There are 3 items listed there: the enrollment report, safety report, travel log report. Anything to add there, Dr. Finch?
Really nothing to add.
Okay. Anything else from any of the board members on any of those? All right, we'll go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Finch?
At our last board meeting, we had a presentation regarding our transitional bilingual instructional program. There was a request to provide some more information about the actual numbers and not just percentages. And so I provided that additional information in the superintendent's report. That's all.
All right. Item 15, board reports, board development.
I just wanted to say, with my wife and I went to Cinderella the other night, and it was, the students, they just did a great job. It was very good drama, and Casey had a lot to do with tech stuff, or everything to do with it. So, and it went really well. It was fun to watch.
Great. Good. Anybody else? Anything else?
My wife reported similar sentiments about Cinderella. I also got yelled at because apparently I got yelled at literally by her because apparently the stage is not in the front where the pit isn't secure or stable.
Oh, okay.
And so like some of the stage wasn't used and I'm like, well, but I'm not in charge of the stage. Anyway, apparently there in the auditorium, some of it might not be because it's unstable.
Okay.
So something maybe to look at.
Yeah,
But
something to look at.
but that aside, it was she loved it, and my son loved it as well.
Well, tickets are sold out for Thursday night, but there's still tickets available for Friday, Saturday matinee, and Saturday night.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Finch, can I go back to item 11C, the resolution? And we make sure a fresh copy of that resolution is in the next agenda package at least for that date?
Right. For the resolution would be for the March 25th.
That's correct.
Yeah.
For that meeting, I just want to make
Correct,
sure there's
yeah.
a fresh copy in the agenda
Yes.
package.
Yes.
For the board packet at least. Okay. All right, hearing nothing else, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. 8:18, again, February 25th, 2025. Thank all of you for attending, those who brave the elements to get to our meeting. We appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you.